Well, callers are waiting, and we're starting to get some lined up, but just hang loose. So we'll get to callers in just a bit. But first, we want to go ahead and welcome our guest to the show, Jeff D. Welcome
Thanks,
back.
Martin.
Now, we talked last week a bit about how March 24th, I believe, is the day that the Supreme Court is finally going to hear arguments in the Michael Newdow pledge case.
That's correct.
Where he basically made the case that, for the government to require compulsory recitation of the pledge when it contains a religious statement.
No, I got to correct you there.
Yeah.
This is tricky, and there's been a lot of false reports about what this actually, what the structure of the argument actually is.
Okay.
The law in California that he challenged required teachers to lead the pledge.
Okay.
It didn't require students to say the pledge.
Okay.
Right. So it was compulsory, but only in a particular way.
Right.
Though, of course, this raises the specter of coercion of students to go along and do as they are expected.
Sure.
In exactly the same way that the high school football game prayers in Santa Fe, Texas, a couple of years back, did that same thing, and that was found unconstitutional.
Right.
Right. So,
So the teachers were compelled.
yes, the teachers were compelled to conduct the exercise.
And as a practical matter, the students were more or less compelled, because who isn't going to?
Right. I mean, it's still a captive audience,
Yeah.
and it's still the government officially leading this activity. You know, it has all of the elements that are necessary to, identify it as government-led.
Yeah.
Right.
So, now there's this thing you do in Supreme Court cases, or in any court case, I understand, or certain kinds of court cases. That's called an amicus brief. An amicus brief is a document submitted by some group other than the plaintiff or the defendant that supports either one side or the other, right? It says these are the reasons why we think that side is right. And the atheist community of Austin was invited to submit an amicus brief on Newdow's behalf in the Supreme Court case that's coming up.
Right. Now, can these amicus briefs actually have an influence upon the outcome of whatever decision is made, since the people filing them aren't actually either plaintiff or defendant? They're not directly involved in the case?
I think that their purpose is to simply make sure that the judges are as informed as possible about all of the different viewpoints concerning the case.
Right.
Right. It's to make sure that apart from the specific arguments made in the courtroom, other viewpoints that are relevant are in the judges' minds.
Okay.
So I would guess that, a lot of the questioning that comes from the bench in the Supreme Court is driven by them having received these arguments.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
Okay.
And they present the two sides in the case with the arguments to see whether they can refute them. So I volunteered to write a brief on behalf of the ACA, and I was happy to do that. It's very, very exciting to think that anything I wrote would go before the Supreme Court.
Yeah, that's
like terrifying.
That's pretty cool, actually.
And I wasn't the only one. Manda also wrote a brief, and in fact, what actually occurred is several different atheist organizations got together and submitted their briefs to a single lawyer who is putting them together.
Oh, I see.
And to submit a brief on behalf of all those different organizations. It makes the brief longer, more detailed, and represent more people, these are all good things.
Yeah, very good. Okay.
So what I came in here to talk about today is the amicus briefs on the other side. Because to prepare for mine, the first thing I did is I went to Michael Newdow's website, www.restorethepledge.com, where amicus briefs in defense of the phrase "under God" in the Pledge of Allegiance are posted for people to read. And I read some. And you wouldn't believe the kind of nonsense grown men are submitting to the Supreme Court in defense of the idea that we ought to not only keep having the pledge, but keep having it with the words under God in there.
Yeah, after 4 years of this show, I don't think there's anything that you ever could say about anything that would shock me.
Well,
but you never can tell.
There's a difference between, just people in the community who are, just have a personal interest in religion issues, right?
Sure.
And have their personal views, and it's just, there's not a big stake. It's, they're interested in asking us questions and stuff. That's all fine, but these are lawyers, right? So lawyers representing people who care how this case comes out.
Interesting.
Submitting arguments that are just so completely vacuous.
But from what
you will be amazed. I
From what you were
guarantee it.
saying earlier, though, this is normal people who are not involved with the case submitting these arguments to the lawyers.
But those people can be lawyers, though. I mean,
But no,
Well,
but
they
my
could be,
point
yes.
is, yes, ultimately, well,
But
it's
if the
not,
lawyer-
it's not quite that straightforward. I know that in our case, the briefs have been submitted by the different organizations to the lawyer. The lawyer is using those the text we sent them as basically building blocks of a legal argument.
Yeah. But
And
he is,
so he's not even like he's not even paraphrasing us or cutting and pasting. He's making an entire new argument.
Yeah.
Right.
But that argument...
he's reformulating all of the stuff we've said to make it, pass constitutional muster.
But is he bound to use those documents and basically just clean them up in a sense versus...
That's a good question.
Because, if he has his own input in it,
I know
can he throw out all these arguments that are completely waste of time?
Apparently yes, because there are things that I wrote in the brief that I submitted on behalf of the ACA that have not made it into his final document.
Yeah.
Right? And that's fine. I mean, his job is to make sure that the final thing is persuasive.
Exactly.
So it does appear that the lawyer can do that.
Okay.
Right? His job is to make sure that what gets submitted is worthwhile.
Yes.
You want to hear what lawyers had thought was worthwhile in the arguments
sure
in favor of under God?
But before you start, you don't have to submit your amicus brief through a lawyer, do you? Or do you have to?
I think you don't have to, but if you what the guy has done in our case is
Well, I'm just saying is some of these pro under God amicus briefs might not have been vetted by a lawyer before they were submitted. That's all I'm saying.
These ones were.
Oh, these were.
You can tell when they were. I mean, it says the name of the lawyer that.
Oh, all right. Okay. I didn't. That wasn't clear.
No,
to
this
me.
is not just people off the street.
Yeah.
All right. This is
legal.
lawyers taking actual arguments submitted to them.
All right. Okay.
And their job is to
make it make sense.
Find constitutional support for those viewpoints, and then present that to the Supreme Court.
All right. So lay them on us.
Reciting the phrase under God is just ceremonial deism. The contexts of ceremonial deism are patriotic and not religious, and are not part of the ritual of any single religious group. Such references are typically short and generic, as is the reference to God in the pledge. Now, what's wrong with that?
I think I have one.
Okay.
I thought, it says ceremonial deism is patriotic. Well, I thought that patriotism had to do with your loyalty and love for your country. It didn't have anything to do with whether you believed in a big invisible man or not.
I think that is correct.
Okay.
This is simply an assertion that in order to be patriotic, you have to believe in God.
Yeah.
And another one in there is the fact that they said upholding one belief, something along those lines. Well,
They say it's not part of the ritual of any single religious group.
okay, so it's not any single religious group, but it's monotheism, so it's not Christianity.
That's
It's Christianity and Judaism and Muslim and stuff like that, but it's still leaving out any non-theists or
it's not identifying
polytheists.
itself with any one
right.
doctrine.
So whether it supports 1 or 50 doesn't really matter because you're not including everybody.
That's
You're
right.
still leaving people out.
Let me jump over to another argument. We'll come back to this one in a second. Okay. Another form that this has taken is the statement, patriotic invocations of God do not attempt to establish a state religion, nor suppress the exercise or non-exercise of religion. This is that whole, the separation clause only says that the government can't establish a single state religion.
Yeah.
But this is nonsense.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, what they are asking us to believe is that the Founding Fathers only wanted to make sure there wasn't a single state religion. They want us to believe that as long as the government expresses a bias in favor of a group of religions that contains at least two,
then that's not...
that even if all other religions are then being excluded, thank you, then it's okay.
That's fine.
And that's absolutely ridiculous. You know, the freedom of religion does not stop at, well, we can't take a subset of all religions and we can't take just a specific religion and call that the main one. You can't take a subset of religions, the monotheist religions, and say those are the official ones that will get the stamp of approval from the government either. There are all kinds of religions out there and viewpoints that are not religious, like atheism, that are all protected equally under the Constitution.
Or should be, at least.
Yeah.
Well, they
are.
That's what the Constitution
Currently, they
does.
are. Currently,
Whether,
they are.
you know, yeah, right.
Yeah, but what I always find so ironic about the pro-under God side, or what I call the theocratic side, because that's what it is that, excuse me, they ultimately always end up backing up until they're up against the wall, and they end up with an argument which is always some variation of, well, it doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
So that's why we should keep it in.
That's the whole ceremonial part of ceremonial.
But that's the
theism.
irony of it, because it's like, it seems to me that clearly it does mean something, otherwise the believers would not be fighting for it so passionately.
But it's not just that. I mean, imagine, if you will, that that somebody were to argue before the Supreme Court that slavery is okay as long as it's just ceremonial slavery.
Yeah.
Right? Just saying that something
Racism,
is ceremonial
yeah.
does not make it any less offensive.
Yeah.
Because what you're saying when you do that ceremony is you're saying this thing we have a ceremony about, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And that's not the government's job when it comes to religion.
Yeah.
Government needs to remain neutral on religion.
You don't have ceremonies about things that don't mean something to you.
Well, that's
too.
it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's true too.
Yeah.
Right. But even if it is a ceremony, right? I mean, it doesn't mean that you can expect people who are offended by the thing you got the ceremony about not to be offended or not to be excluded.
Yeah. Right.
It excludes them and offends them just exactly as much.
Right.
Right? You can't hide behind claiming it's just ceremony.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move on to another argument. The phrase under God simply acknowledges the historical fact of our founding fathers' religious belief. Do you buy that?
When was under God? The first question? When was the nation founded again? Founding fathers?
That would be 1776.
Okay, and when was under God put in?
1954.
Bit of a gap there, wouldn't you say?
That's
Bit of a gap.
Yeah.
Plus, it does not say, the pledge does not say, one nation founded by theists.
No.
Right? It doesn't say that.
Yeah.
It does not say, does not state it as an historical reference. It's stated as a comment about the nature of the United States. That's what's wrong with it.
Yeah.
Similarly, they make I've heard the argument, the words under God merely acknowledge religion rather than promoting it.
So what? It's not the government's business to acknowledge religion.
Yeah.
Plus, it doesn't acknowledge all religion.
Yeah.
Yes.
It acknowledges only the subset of religions that are monotheistic.
Yeah.
And not even all of those, because I'm pretty sure no Muslims are deluded into thinking that
Anybody's talking about them. And
that they're talking about Allah. Even though they are a monotheistic religion, it's pretty darn clear in our culture that they're talking about a particular one. But even if they weren't, even if they want to claim it's generic, that the whole generic argument only goes so far.
Yeah.
It does not go so far as to extend under God to cover things like
Hinduism.
Hinduism that has multiple gods, Buddhism that is a religion with no gods, or atheism, which is the lack of religion. It just can't cover all of those things.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's exclusionary.